Last time I looked at the Smash Bros. Series, I determined which of the characters could cook food, and it turns out, most of them can, probably. But this time we're doing something much more fun. Gambling! Today I'm gonna find out which Smash fighters can canonically gamble. For our purposes today, in order for a character to qualify as a gambler, they have to meet the following criteria. They must bet or wager a resource, which does not have to be currency but must have value, on an outcome which is at least partially determined by luck or circumstances outside of their control. The element of luck must be present. If the characters rig the game in their favor and the result becomes expected, they are not gambling. And all of this must be in-universe. This is about characters gambling fictional money, not players gambling via loot boxes or stuff like that. We're only looking at games as canon here, no movies, TV shows, or spin-off media, because otherwise this would take too long. I'm also going to determine which of these fighters has visited a casino, because, well, casino levels are cool, and not everybody visits a casino to strictly gamble. Those are the rules, so without further ado,
let's go! Gambling! Defeated!
Up first is Mario, and there's a lot here. Mario's visited Great Guy's Casino, Casino Delfino, Goomba's Greedy Gala, the Pianta Parlor, Chain Chomp Wheel, and Shy Guy's Shuffle City, among others. For actual gambling, the first question is Mario Party. Now, I'm not Zoomzyke, I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of this series, but luck and betting is a major part of it. So I'm gonna rule that if a character is in a Mario Party game, that counts as gambling. That might be too broad, but at least for Mario, there are other examples. Great Guy's Casino has slots, and also blackjack and look the other way, but those are free. The Pianta Parlor also has slots, and there's also the Happy Lucky Lottery. Yes, this isn't actually luck-based, but in the context of the universe, this is certainly gambling. Apparently there is a slot machine in Itadaki Street, but if I'm right, you don't put up any money for it. Still, Mario definitely gambles and has been to a casino. Donkey Kong has also been to Goomba's Greedy Gala and Chain Chomp Wheel and is a frequent Mario Partier. In Donkey Kong 64, the Batty Barrel Bandit minigame is a slot machine, but this doesn't cost anything. But in Tropical Freeze, Funky's shop has a capsule machine where you spend coins to buy figures, and this has enough of a luck factor for it to also count. Donkey Kong gambles and has been to a casino. For Breath of the Wild's Link, in Laureline Village, Cloyne operates a gambling game in his hut where you pay up front to get a random reward from a treasure chest, just like in the original Zelda. If we allow that this hut is built for the express purpose of housing this game, then Link gambles and has been to a casino. I'm sure casinos exist in the Metroid series, but I couldn't find any evidence of Samus Aran visiting one nor doing any gambling. We rarely if ever see her outside of her job, so any gambling she does in her downtime is speculation. So Samus doesn't gamble. And if Samus herself doesn't gamble, it's very hard to imagine that Dark Samus does, so let's just call it here, Dark Samus doesn't gamble. Yoshi has been to the Gala and the Wheel, like a lot of characters, so sit tight, as well as Shy Guy's Shuffle City. Yoshi can also gamble for costumes in a capsule machine in Yoshi's Crafted World, so Yoshi gambles and has been to a casino. Kirby is a bit of an odd case. There is a slot machine in Kirby's Pinball Land, but there's no financial penalty for losing. And while crane games are arguably gambling, I'm not convinced that Crane Fever should count. I mean, Kirby's the prize, but is he controlling the machine or is that the player? I'm aiming on the side of this not counting, but it's a fair debate. However, Kirby does visit a casino in Planet Robobot, Rhythm Route Stage 4, and Resolution Road Stage 2 specifically. So of course, Kirby has been to a casino. As with Metroid, casinos and gambling are undoubtedly present in the Lylat system, but I don't think Fox McCloud partakes. The only thing that comes close is the slot machine in Out of This Dimension, but whether or not this is actually happening is beyond me. In any case, this doesn't require any wager, so Fox doesn't gamble. Pikachu can visit one of the game corners with their trainer, and although Pikachu doesn't play the games, that is a casino checked off. For gambling, let's look at the Mystery Dungeon series. Pikachu is playable in Explorers of Sky, which features the Recycle Shop, letting you convert items into prize tickets which you redeem for a chance to win a big prize, which of course is a lottery. This returns in Gates of Infinity via the Prize Palace, which works similarly, so Pikachu gambles and has been to a casino. Luigi has not only been to multiple casinos, the Gala Wheel Shuffle City trifecta applies here, but he also works at one. Some would say Luigi owns this because it's often called Luigi Casino, but what casino owner do you know who works on the floor? Besides, I'm pretty sure that's a non-canonical name anyway. Now here's the question, does this mean Luigi gambles? He's not putting his own money up since that belongs to the house, and at least according to the Nevada Gaming Commission, dealers are restricted from playing the games they run. Since there is a gray area there, I don't think this counts. But the man plays Mario Party, so Luigi gambles and has been to a casino. There aren't any casinos in Eagle Land, but in the Dusty Dunes desert, Ness can find the Sanchez brothers who act as a human slot machine. And even though they are conscious beings and could theoretically influence everything, I'll go on faith that this is a fair game, or found as quirky like this. Ness gambles. One of the tracks in F-Zero GX is Casino Palace, which takes place in an establishment called Bet and Race Dollars. And in the chapter High Stakes in Mute City, he's dragged into a betting race by Silver Nielsen. After winning, Falcon does take his share of the prize money, but also he immediately ditches it, so clearly it didn't actually matter to him. Given that he was forced into this and we have no idea if he put any money down on himself, I don't think this is enough to count. But Captain Falcon has been to a casino. Jigglypuff isn't a playable character in Explorers of Sky or Gates of Infinity, but you can definitely bring them to a game corner, so Jigglypuff has been to a casino. Peach is a card-carrying member of the Gala Wheel Shuffle City Club and is a frequent Mario Party participant, so it's safe to say that she gambles and has been to a casino. Daisy's got the exact same dance card, so she also gambles and has been to a casino. And wouldn't you know it, Bowser has the exact same credentials. He also may be the only character on this list to own a casino, specifically Bowser's Game Room in Mario Party Advance. Again, this doesn't mean that he plays gambling games, but his status as a Mario Party PC does earn him the pass. Bowser gambles and has been to a casino. As far as we know, the only gamble Nana and Popo take is climbing up a frozen mountain, which is not what we're looking for. The Ice Climbers don't gamble. In Ocarina of Time, we never see Sheik or Zelda gambling despite the presence of luck-based games, which we'll discuss in a bit. I also don't think there's any gambling or casinos in Hyrule Warriors, but I could be wrong. For now, Sheik doesn't gamble. There is a gambling game in A Link to the Past, but while this incarnation of Link can play it, there is no evidence that Zelda has, so she doesn't gamble. Despite what some of you claimed in the last video and then provided no supporting evidence for, Dr. Mario is Mario, so Dr. Mario gambles and has been to a casino. Now, while Pikachu is a gambler, I can't extend that to Pichu. In the cooking video, some of you rightly pointed out that a Pokemon who can cook should retain that knowledge as they evolve, which I didn't account for. I agree with that criticism, although in this case, I'm not judging a skill, I'm judging an action. And Pichu hasn't gambled to my knowledge, but you can bring them to the game corner, so Pichu has been to a casino. Falco strikes me as someone who'd take off the slots every now and then, but there's still no evidence, so I can't say that for sure. Falco doesn't gamble. In many Fire Emblem games, there are arenas where you can bet on fights with your units. This feature is available in Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light, Mystery of the Emblem, and their respective remakes, all of which star Marth, who can make bets. I don't think arenas strictly fit the definition of a casino that I said earlier, but Marth gambles. However, there is no arena in Awakening, the Somniel arena in Engage has no entry fee, and the arena in Heroes is not a gambling game, which means that Lucina does not gamble at her available arenas. And I didn't uncover any dialogue that claims her as a gambler, so I'm ruling that Lucina doesn't gamble. Young Link can play a minigame at the treasure chest shop in both Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, and while the latter is 100% skill-based, the former is built on a game of chance, so that's a casino. However, it is not gambling because the Lens of Truth lets you circumvent the luck elements entirely. He does gamble at the Doggy Racetrack where you gotta bet on Blue Dog, and at Dampé's heart-pounding grave-digging tour. The fact that we're betting on grave robbing is fucked, but this isn't a video on ethics. And yes, I know this is coded to give you the piece of heart within 15 attempts, but the gambling element in-universe is present. Young Link gambles and has been to a casino. Considering that Ganondorf destroys the treasure chest game after he takes over Hyrule, he probably wasn't gambling at that shop before he put his plan into action. No evidence to say that he partakes in gambling otherwise, so Ganondorf doesn't gamble. You can take Mewtwo to the game corner, but you can't make them gamble. Mewtwo has been to a casino. The arena returns in Fire Emblem The Binding Blade, which stars Roy, so he gambles. Chrom can only visit the arenas that Lucina can visit, so he's still at square zero regarding gambling. There is dialogue in Awakening where he mentions he'd bet good coin on something, but no actual wager takes place. He does make a bet with Vike, but Chrom makes the point that he's not putting up money because that'd come from the Royal Treasury, and he's not about that. They do end up cooking together, but we already covered that. Anyway, Chrom doesn't gamble. Next is Mr. Game & Watch, and your immediate thought might be the blackjack game. But this only has graphics for cards, no dealers or players, so this isn't conclusive. Based on that, I have to say that Mr. Game & Watch doesn't gamble, because there aren't any other gambling games in this line. While Meta Knight can run through the same casino levels in Planet Robobot, I couldn't find any evidence that he gambles either. So unless I'm missing something, I can only conclude that Meta Knight has been to a casino. In Kid Icarus Uprising, before you begin each level, you can gamble your heart, a currency, in the Fiend's Cauldron to increase the level of difficulty. Technically this is for the player, but I'm gonna give Pit the credit and say that he gambles. And there's at least one chapter where you play as Dark Pit, so Dark Pit gambles as well. Zero Suit Samus is Samus, so Zero Suit Samus doesn't gamble. I am amazed that Wario doesn't own a casino. That is exactly the kind of enterprise he would run. I guess his laziness extends to business planning, and to be fair, he's usually about treasure hunting rather than raw capitalism. I also don't take him for a traditional gambler. He might be swayed away by the prospect of losing money because he's far more interested in collecting it. But he is a Gala Wheel Shuffle City tourist and a Mario Party regular, so that's enough for me. Wario gambles and has been to a casino. While I don't believe Solid Snake has ever gambled or been to a casino, there is dialogue in Portable Ops where it's revealed that Python lost a poker match against Snake. But that's Naked Snake, not Solid Snake. And this Snake doesn't gamble. There aren't any arenas in Ike's Fire Emblem games, and while he fights alongside the gambler Malakov, I couldn't find anything that suggests that Ike played with him at any point. So Ike doesn't gamble. I got some comments saying that the trainer in Ultimate is based on Red and Leaf, and I can see that I should base my judgments on them, and not on every trainer throughout the series like I did before. In this case, Red and Leaf can, you guessed it, play games at the game corner, so Pokemon Trainer gambles and has been to a casino. Squirtle can visit a game corner and gamble at the recycle shop, so Squirtle has gambled and been to a casino. Just as with Pichu, I won't extend the gambler moniker to Ivysaur even if Bulbasaur can wager at the recycle shop, but of course, game corner, so Ivysaur has been to a casino. And Charizard gets the same treatment, meaning Charizard has been to a casino. The only gambling machine that I know Diddy Kong uses is Batty Barrel Bandit, which I already determined isn't gambling, but Diddy Kong can drive around Chain Chomp Wheel, so he's been to a casino. There isn't any casino in Mother 3, but the Sanchez brothers return and work exactly as they do in Earthbound, which means that Lucas gambles. Sonic is a regular casino goer, Casinopolis, Bingo Highway, Casino Street, Casino Paradise, the list goes on. And in the original Casino Night Zone, you can activate these slot machines to get a bunch of rings. You don't put anything up to activate these, but you can lose a ton of rings doing this, so this counts. There are tons of slots throughout the series, too many to list, but we know enough to say that Sonic gambles and has been to a casino. King Dedede is barely in Planet Robobot and doesn't visit the casinos there, and as for gambling, I couldn't find anything. King Dedede doesn't gamble. Olimar's stranded on a planet without a casino, and while he can find gambling paraphernalia, he's not a gambler. His wife is, though, at least in the original version of Pikmin 2, spending money on lottery tickets or at a casino. So while Olimar's wife would get 2 thumbs up for this video, Olimar himself doesn't gamble. While Riolu can gamble at the recycle shop, Lucario can't. But once again, you get it. Lucario has been to a casino. Rob can only canonically play 2 games, Gyromite and Stack Up, neither of which have any gambling. Technically, you could bring Rob to a casino, and I guess he could pick up chips and place them down at a blackjack table or something. Similar to how some of you, jokingly or otherwise, suggested that Rob can cook if you strap kitchen tools to his arms. I love that creativity, but of course, if I treated this as genuine evidence, you'd all actually jump down my throat. So Rob doesn't gamble. In Phantom Hourglass, while there aren't any casinos per se, Link can visit Harrow Island to dig up treasures for a fee, and even uncover Lucky Lee, who asks you to cough up more rupees for the chance of picking a higher amount. So Toon Link gambles. I'd be shocked if Wolf hasn't gambled at some point, though I wouldn't put cheating past him either. But I couldn't find an example, so Wolf doesn't gamble. In Animal Crossing Pocket Camp and New Horizons, you can play Break Tapper, which is a slot machine that dispenses random rewards. You can also add slots to your home, but this is just furniture. And also, you can theoretically make a casino in these games, but I'm ruling that this shouldn't count because it's fudging the boundary too much between canon and non-canon for me. Feel free to debate that, but anyway, Villager gambles. Speaking of fudging the boundaries between canon and non-canon, let's talk about a Japanese exclusive mobile game. Rockman Poker is a 2012 mobile game where Mega Man and his pals play poker in a casino. Accepting this as canon might be controversial, but come on, it's Mega Man and he's playing poker and he's in a casino. It's clear as day. Mega Man gambles and has been to a casino. Wii Fit Trainer doesn't do much besides exercising in this gym void place, so easy judgment here, they don't gamble. While Rosalina doesn't gamble in either Mario Galaxy 1 or 2, she can drive around Chain Chomp Wheel and she's a Mario partier, so Rosalina gambles and has been to a casino. In real life, professional boxing matches do take place at casinos, but that isn't true for Little Mac's bouts. These look like actual arenas or gyms to me. As for betting, we don't know for sure if he ever bets on himself or any other fighter. I doubt he would, but I guess I can't outright refute it either. Still, I don't think Little Mac gambles. Greninja is the first Pokemon who cannot visit a game corner because by this point in time, they weren't a thing anymore and you can't bring Greninja into a game that has one. So Greninja doesn't gamble, nor have they visited a casino. There was a WiiWare game called Texas Hold'em Tournament where your Miis play poker in a casino. Pretty clear gambling there, and as they're also drivers in Mario Kart Wii, they visit the wheel too. The Miis gamble and have been to a casino. I don't think Palutena uses the Fiend's Cauldron since she's not a player character, and I didn't find any other instances throughout the dialogue, so Palutena doesn't gamble. So there were mobile games called Pac-Man Casino Card Game Pack and Slots Pack, but I cannot find any info about them. As far as I can gather, these are themed around Pac-Man and not starring him, but I can't find game dumps or any footage of them. But in Pac-Man world, you can bet coins on a slot machine for lives, so Pac-Man gambles. In Fire Emblem Awakening, Robin mentions playing cards with Pan, but only in passing. Nothing else to report as far as I'm aware, so Robin doesn't gamble. Closest Shulk comes to gambling is gem crafting, but the results are guaranteed. It's not luck, despite what these percentages indicate. No casinos either, so he doesn't gamble. Bowser Jr. is a Wheel Shuffle City kid, but not the Gala because that was the era of the Koopa Kids. Remember them? And he's also playable in Mario Party, but only Island Tour after you unlock him. So yeah, Bowser Jr. gambles and has been to a casino. The Duck Hunt team only does two things, hunting ducks and shooting clay pigeons. Neither of those are gambling, so Duck Hunt doesn't gamble. According to an interview from a developer and an official art book, Ryu might have bet on himself in street fights at some point in his career. I couldn't independently verify this detail, and in any case, that's not in-game information. He has been to two casinos, Las Vegas in Street Fighter II and High Roller Casino in Street Fighter V. Technically he's fighting outside of these casinos, but that's splitting hairs. Ryu has been to a casino. Ken can tick those two casinos on his boxes as well, but Mr. Masters also doesn't bet on himself as far as I'm aware, so Ken has only been to a casino. Cloud Strife visits the Gold Saucer early on, which is casino-esque with its flashy lights and entertainment, but it's an amusement park, not a bona fide casino. But he can bet on chocobo races here, so Cloud gambles for sure. Fire Emblem Fates has an arena, and while Corrin gambles resources rather than money, that is still gambling as I defined it earlier, so they gamble. Bayonetta doesn't visit any casinos, and at least during the event of the game, I don't think she does any gambling. So, Bayonetta doesn't gamble. Although I don't think there are any casinos in the Splatoon series, in Splatoon 3, you can bet cash at a shell-out machine to get random rewards. So Inkling gambles. As a space pirate, gambling fits Ridley's vibe, but we haven't seen it, and no casinos popped up in this series since I last mentioned it minutes ago. He doesn't gamble. I couldn't find anything in the Castlevania universe that shows Simon having anything to do with gambling or casinos, but I sure did find a bunch of pages about Castlevania pachinko machines. Thanks, Konami. Anyway, Simon doesn't gamble. Richter's the same story, so of course, he doesn't gamble. King K. Rool doesn't operate any casinos and isn't a gambler either. Technically, he was involved in the bet in Donkey Kong Land where Cranky bets that DK can't beat a game on a handheld, but only as a part of the action, not the wagers. So he doesn't gamble. Isabelle doesn't seem like the kind of girl to gamble, and I couldn't find any examples, but I am far from an expert, so don't quote me on this. For now, Isabelle doesn't gamble. Incineroar can't be transferred to a game featuring a game corner, so they don't gamble. Piranha Plant hasn't gambled or visited a casino yet, but as of writing this script, Mario Kart World hasn't come out yet and he will appear in that. There doesn't appear to be any casino track or set piece or any luck-based gambling-esque mechanics in that game, so I'm fine saying that Piranha Plant doesn't gamble for now, but that could change. Remember how I said rigging the games doesn't count as gambling? Well, in Nijima's casino, Joker and the Phantom Thieves get the edge over the house by tampering with the games to give them guaranteed payouts. That wouldn't count as gambling, but you can play for stakes before you rig them. So Joker does gamble and has been to a casino. In Dragon Quest III, you can bet on fights at the Monster Arena. In 4, there's monster fights, slots, and poker at the Endor Casino and the Pioneer Casino. In 8, there's slots, roulette, and bingo at the Baccarat Casino and Pick'em Casino. That's more than enough to say that Hero gambles and has been to a casino, at least in some forms. While there are no casinos in the Banjo universe, in the Banjo-Tooie intro, Banjo and Kazooie are playing poker with Bottles and Mumbo for coins. It doesn't go well for the Bear and Bird. But it especially doesn't go well for Bottles. Banjo and Kazooie gamble. Not sure if Terry ever bet on himself as a fighter, but in Mark of the Wolves, the Oriental Casino Woo is certainly a casino stage, so Terry has been to a casino. In Fire Emblem 3 Heroes, while there is a pseudo-arena via the Training Grounds tournaments, there is no entry fee. No casinos either, so Byleth doesn't gamble. I couldn't find any evidence that paints Min Min as a gambler, and there aren't any casino stages or environments as far as I know, so Min Min doesn't gamble. I already mentioned that player-made casinos don't count, so building your own casino in Minecraft doesn't count as a casino. As for gambling, well, there are random loot tables like finding an enchanted book, but if that's the closest that this game comes to gambling, I'm not willing to give it to Steve and Alex just on that. They don't gamble. Sephiroth doesn't do any gambling during the events of Final Fantasy VII, but he does appear at the Gold Saucer in Rebirth, albeit in a vision. We already determined that the Gold Saucer isn't a casino, though, so no dice. Sephiroth doesn't gamble. Now I know what some of you are going to say, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 has Blade Resonance, which is a gacha system. But this doesn't count as gambling for Pyra. This is for the player and party members, not the blades themselves. Plus, it's been a while since I've played this game, but I seem to remember that in-universe, this isn't a random pull, so it's not diegetically luck-based. So, Pyra doesn't gamble. Same rules apply to Mifra, so she doesn't gamble either. Kazuya can fight at the High Rollers Club in Tekken 6, and unlike the other fighting game examples, Kazuya fights inside the casino. Whoa! I don't think he gambles though, he has tons of money so he doesn't need to, but Kazuya has been to a casino. Finally, we come to Sora, and while Kingdom Hearts has some moves and abilities that are gambling themed, that's not enough. As for casinos, does Oogie Boogie's torture room count? Just as in the source material, I don't know if Oogie runs a casino for the citizens of Halloween Town or if it's just part of his theme. My gut feeling is that this shouldn't count, but who knows? Certainly not me. For now, Sora doesn't gamble. Alright, that's everybody covered, so let's cash in our chips. I counted 40 fighters who don't gamble and have never been to a casino, 13 who gamble, 15 who have been to a casino, and 22 who have done both, assuming you count the Miis as 3 different characters. I tried my best to cover everything, but inevitably something has fallen through the cracks or was redundant to mention, so feel free to add more details or enlighten me what I got wrong. And while you're down there ranting and raving, why not like the video and subscribe if you want to see more stuff? I have ideas for a bunch more Smash videos, one of which should be on track for September, assuming no one gets to it first. I'm GrayJ, and I'll see you some other time with more silly things.